Well, here we are again, reboot time. Spider-Man has indeed a unique history in cinema. A mere 15 years, he's debuted to record-breaking box office returns only to collapse under its own weight. 5 years later, then get rebooted, then collapse from the same pains, then get help from its considerably more talented parents to rise again. With Spidey finally joining the MCU and already garnering massive praise for Tom Holland after only a mere 20 minutes of screen time in Captain America's Civil War, there seems to be a renewed faith in the cinematic prospects of the character, even if Sony is still being a territorial bitch when it comes to the Rogues Gallery. So, in celebration of Spidey's solo debut, Spider-Man Homecoming, arriving in theaters and being all kinds of, amazing, we decided to debut our new series, Less to More, by seeing where the Wall Crawler's new offering lands on the quality scale amidst his cinematic predecessors. This list will start from worst to best, but only for Spider-Man's solo efforts. So, sorry Civil War, but it wasn't called Spider-Man Civil War. So without further ado, let's start climbing. Okay, show of hands, who is actually surprised that this is going to be the lowest on the list? Put your hand down. So much has already been said about all the bad stuff this movie had, and so, in aid of observing how badly this movie screwed the pooch, let's point out some of the good things this movie had. Despite appearances, this movie actually had a strong focus on the central theme, specifically, the corruptive influence of revenge. This film actually shows you how dangerous it can be to live your life for revenge, in various mental states and utilizing all the characters it displayed in all the different states. We see Harry engaging in self-destructive behavior as he adopts his father's personage as the new Goblin without taking into consideration that his father's demise may well have been his very own doing. Meanwhile, we see Spidey blinded with rage that his father's killer is still on the loose, that he lets his newfound power control his rage and bring him dangerously close to becoming a monster that ultimately becomes Venom. Eddie Brock was already begging God to kill Peter Parker. Wrong church, Eddie, you want these guys, they hate everything. Because, that pesky Sixth Commandment is just a suggestion, really. Anyway, he was desperate for vengeance and mixed that rage with a symbiote with a severe rejection issue, and, well, you got some bad mojo. So, with this remarkably layered psychological study, it makes it all the more tragic that it got dangerously buried under a pile of bad decisions. Now, before you all get in a huff, hear me out. No matter what happens, I do love this movie. I remember the chills I got watching Spider-Man on the big screen for the first time, and watching it, I had the same feelings I had watching the original Superman. That classic, oh wow, gee whiz feeling, but unfortunately, like the original Superman, it really hasn't aged well. That's always the danger of special effects heavy films. There's always a danger that the look of the film will not stand the test of time. Don't believe me? Look at the original Matrix and tell me that still looks perfect. Sure, there's a lot of practical effects, and that is commendable, but at this point, the staging of the actors and the stunts, along with the camera work, honestly made it look like a cosplay stunt show. It's not until the final fight in the derelict building that we get a fight scene that actually feels intense. The punches feel painful, the desperation is palpable, and the stakes actually feel high. Which for a climax is great, but you gotta slog through a lot of silliness to get there. But it's not just the effects that don't age well. In this, the age of the MCU, we are spoiled by a wealth of well-written characters and sub-characters. Nowadays, we're blessed with witty repartee and a stronger focus on making characters multidimensional. But this film practically spoon-feeds the characters' motivations, and my god, they are so basic. In the case of superheroes' love interests, nowadays we've got the badass Agent Carter, who is so amazing, she got her own TV series. We've got Pepper Potts, who's, even when she's in danger, she actually winds up saving Tony in many different ways. Then you got Jane Foster, who's kooky, but she actually did assist Thor in becoming a hero again, and through her own smarts was able to use her science savvy to defeat Malekith. Mary Jane? Ugh. And it's a shame. They give her character a good setup that could actually make her interesting in the way she deals with her future troubles. But my god, I know it's wrong to slut shame a character, but what other defining character traits does she possess in this movie, or in fact any of the movies? Apart from getting saved, she jumps from one guy to another like they were sexy lily pads. Which, when you put her next to the aforementioned examples, this is just insulting. I still had fun watching this movie, but not for the original reasons. I enjoyed it, and that's just a damn shame. That's just a damn shame. Yep, I rate this higher than the first Spider-Man film, and if it helps, I genuinely had to ponder this, and really, I'm happy with this decision. Yes, it does make the same mistakes as Spider-Man 3 did as far as overloading a story with too many elements, and funny enough, this one actually goes crazy with the subplots, while 3 actually has a stronger focus on its theme. So why is this one higher than those two? For the simple fact that Amazing Spider-Man 2 just isn't as embarrassing. I tried rewatching Spider-Man 3 recently, and it's just painful. I would even say it's gotten worse over the years. It's kind of like watching episode 1 when you were a kid, and then you watch it now. Sure, the story is all over the place on this one, but funny enough, it still has a strong consistency about it. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man has levels. He's funny, but when he needs to be serious, oh, he makes sure you know it. Going back to the merry hate, if there was anything that has me going back to this movie, and even the prior one, it's that Gwen Stacy is just amazing in these movies. She's unflinchingly brave, she's resourceful, she's intuitive, and she's sassy to boot. And her banter with Peter is probably some of the best boyfriend-girlfriend banter I've ever heard in not just any superhero movie, but any movie. The Oscorp closet scene alone is just magic, so when we inevitably get to Gwen's spoiler death, it's genuinely sad, and Garfield acts the hell out of it. As for the excess subplots, yeah, there's a lot of them, but funny enough, they all actually get their fair share of attention. Electro is basically Batman Forever's Riddler, but portrayed here, it's intentionally uncomfortable. The film still takes time to set up that Max Dillon was disturbed long before he got the Dr. Manhattan treatment. While Harry Osborn's early setup is sped through, his inevitable turn into the Green Goblin actually feels natural. Sure, the Rhino got the short end, but why are we so mad about that? Was the Rhino really that interesting of a character? Oh, I just made some enemies. I know Spider-Man 2 is beloved in a lot of circles, and yeah, it is a considerably better movie than the first one. Now, firstly, Doc Ock is still one of the best villains, not just in any Spider-Man movie, but in most superhero movies. He's intimidating yet tragic, and Alfred Molina is somehow able to deliver even the most cliché dialogue with weight and dignity. It's mainly because of him we get one of the greatest action sequences in superhero movies, and when it comes to the action, this movie still holds up. The camera work is better, the CGI is vastly improved, and the dramatic payoff with the passengers still gets me choked up in lieu of the hand-fisted Christ imagery. The movie also introduces an interesting notion that Spidey's powers can be nullified with psychosomatic symptoms. I sometimes have a hard time doing stuff when I'm not right in the noggin. Why would superheroes be any different? But what diminishes this film and keeps it from the greatness in retrospect is that though the villain's motivations are great, by God, the protagonists are so damn stupid! I've already jabbed at Mary Jane for lily padding every man she meets, but damn, this girl pulled a Graduate on poor John Jameson. And while we didn't get a lot of screen time with him, what we did see of him, he seemed like a nice enough guy that didn't deserve to get bailed on. Aside from that, I work in the theater community. I've been in a lot of shows, and so have a lot of my friends. So if my friends can't make it to my shows, I'm not going to get all offended about it. Peter had a legitimate reason for being late, and to boot, paid for a ticket for orchestra seats on his salary. Now, I know it's off-Broadway, but the prices are still nuts. Who cares if he couldn't make it, you selfish bitch? He just helped pay your salary. Ah! Now, as for Spidey, in the original Spider-Man story that inspired this movie, Peter was actually facing problems on multiple fronts. First off, public opinion of Spidey was at an all-time low thanks to Jameson, which made it hard for Spidey to do his job. Because of that, combined with the fact that he also couldn't keep his grades up, he was late to everything, he was disappointing friends and family by becoming increasingly unreliable. While this is alluded to in the movie, it chooses to focus on the fact that Peter just wants Mary Jane, and that is the primary impetus behind him quitting. Not because of things actually getting dangerous and detrimental to those he cares about, but because I want my damn poontang and I'm on cockblock. Which would be forgivable if Mary Jane were worth a damn! But she has done nothing to make us understand why he's so crazy about her. So yeah, that's what keeps this film from a higher spot on this list. But, you know what? It's not at the bottom, so that's something. Now that we have two takes on Spider-Man's origin committed to film, it is, in my opinion, Amazing Spider-Man is hands down the better one. I've already gone on about how great Gwen Stacy is, but in this one, I love Sally Field and Martin Sheen as Aunt May and Uncle Ben. I love their chemistry with Andrew Garfield. They felt more like a family, and the writing never felt forced. As great as Spidey's motto is, great power, great responsibility, it's a little too on the nose for the tone this film was delivering and has all the subtlety of an anime convention on speed. Here, it sounds like it comes from a parental figure, and the falling out scene between Peter and Uncle Ben, well, it feels more like the totally justifiable anger of an abandoned kid lashing out, as opposed to Maguire's Peter being a complete douchebag to a cartoonishly sweet man. So when it gets to Uncle Ben's, spoiler, inevitable death, honestly, this time it hurts. This was the heart of what made this film work. It had a strong grasp on the character's motivations, and it took interesting turns. Before Spidey actually becomes Spidey, he ends up becoming a vigilante first, on a vendetta, but he quickly broadens his perspective. There was a more flowing transition, showing Spidey develop from one point to another. I'm also going to add that the action sequences in this film felt more natural, they had a more kinetic flow, and it also helps that it was also done practically. Well, for the most part. The showdown at the school was probably one of the highlights of this. Now, while the Lizard wasn't a well-realized villain visually, Rhys Ifan delivers an entirely sympathetic portrayal of Kirk Connors. I love the scene where his arm grows back for the first time, and while his descent into science-y madness is a bit erratic, his modus operandi still makes sense. He believes that this is the proper evolutionary path, and in his mind he's just sharing the wealth. It's a much more disciplined, a bit more mature, and a bit more relatable take on a story that's already been told. That's why I gravitate to it all this time. And for the longest time, it was one of my favorite Spider-Man movies. Until... Yep, Maguire, Garfield, you just got dethroned. Now, I've already done a review about a lot of the stuff that made this film work, vis-a-vis the Vulture being a great villain and the high school elements, so for more on that, go watch the review. So I'm going to take the time to get into all the things I forgot to point out in that review, so obviously... Firstly, this movie did an incredible job showing all the disadvantages Spidey actually has depending on his terrain. There's a hilarious sequence when Spidey is trying to navigate through a suburb. Unfortunately, it's hard to web swing in an area that's so low to the ground. It even gets to a point when Peter can't even do that and is left running through a golf course. This film really got into a lot of the growing pains Spidey's going to go through as the little fish in a big pond. It was just refreshing to see that a superhero isn't going to be 100% combat ready right off the bat. Not only was this the first Spider-Man film that did that, this is one of the few superhero films where the hero still has a lot to learn at the end. Off the top of my head, Doctor Strange is another recent example. Because they did that, I absolutely love the ending where Peter is given a formal invitation to the Avengers, but turns it down because he realizes Spider-Man needs to be that hero who keeps his ear to the ground. He just spent the movie fighting a threat that actually hit dangerously close to home, and someone needs to be there for the threats to come. The arrival of Spider-Man Homecoming during this point of the MCU is oddly fortuitous, as now we've seen heroes who fight massive, worldwide threats, and then with the Netflix Defenders show, we're seeing heroes who delve into the dark and seedy underbelly that few of the big superheroes would ever be bothered to venture. Spidey has always been the bridge. His enemies have always been larger-than-life threats, and while they're not worldwide threats, they can still cause some headaches for a lot of innocent people. So Spidey is that vital middle ground. The reason I'm placing Homecoming at number 1 on this list is that in the comics, Spidey has always been a vital fixture of the Marvel Universe, and having him running solo for so many movies inevitably felt so damn hollow. But having him here, finally seeing him among his fellow heroes, you just feel like this is earned, and Marvel Studios rewarded you for your patience. And for extra points, totally trolled you in the post-credit stinger. Does this list make you happy? Sad? Angry? Slightly miffed? Overtaken with passion for my smooth, velvety tones? Well, keep clicking for more addictive content from Narcotic Casserole. Click, and thou shalt be served.